Hi, Mix.
How are you? And it's funny, I just stopped mid-sentence because I knew that we were going on to record. But for the purposes of the listener, you and I have just been discussing injuries and identity and how we identify as a particular part of ourselves, and that's the biggest thing, which of course then leads you and I to talk about mindset. And then I'm just pushed into me thinking about mindset and talking about it a lot with people with regards to changing their diet and exercise habits, and everything's interlinked.
It's super interlinked. And I think I always find what's kind of currently happening in our lives, current affairs, if you will. And my son, and my daughter actually both suffered injuries. Jake's a super athletic kid. Gemma is too. And you kind of can't put them in a bubble, but he went out there and he got hit kind of hard in the shoulder. And and I always say this, that actually the thing that I'm always that I repeat regularly is I just keep your body healthy. And I always feel like as a parent, and maybe as a coach too, if you are injury free on top of that, then it's even better. So just try to stay injury free, but sometimes you can't. And it's hard when you have particular injuries that sideline you and you just can't, when you're up there kind of not feeling like yourself, it's hard to reconcile the person that you currently are with the injury versus the person that you're not when you don't have it. And both are you, both are your identities in this moment, but you're kind of fighting the one. At least I'm actually saying this out loud. I would like to give advice to myself, all of our listeners, all of our clients, and my son, that both can be true. And even if you are working through an injury and this is not how you perform regularly, find some kind of development in that place too. And this is really, really hard because I think we all are just squirmy and we can't wait to get out of it. And we always make these excuses this is not how I normally am. I don't do this way when I'm just injured. You know what I mean? It's an immediate way to it's the same kind of thing when you're changing the different patterns of, in a way, when people push back with you on their diets, they're sort of a little injured psychologically because they,
100%.
right. They're just they kind of put up a guard and say, well, this is just how I am with you right now because this is how I normally do it. And so I don't, I'm just thinking about it because it comes up quite a bit for people. And I would love to kind of just say this is where I am with an impaired shoulder, for instance, which is where Jake is. And I'm going to practice my movement, practice healing, practice getting better, practice to better understand my body right in this moment and just see sort of where I could potentially grow to on the other side of it. But I guess this all goes back to ego.
Oh, no, it does. And even though, when we were chatting and it's well, as a 14-year-old kid, it is the biggest thing in your life. But as a 44-year-old or a 54-year-old, your sport sometimes is the biggest thing in your life. And I talk to so many clients and I'm like this myself. If I'm injured and I can't run, logically, I know it's okay. Of course it's, my, tolerance to injury and what I can and can't do is so much better now than what it ever was. But you are part, what you do is part of who you are. And if you can't do the thing you love, and then you start questioning, maybe I'm not as good as what I thought I was, and maybe this is, you start questioning everything if your identity is tied up into that. Yes. And as a kid, and particularly with Jake and all he's seems to be doing this summer is just, I don't know, water polo and basketball and all the things. And if you're injured and can't do that, you'd sort of be a little bit lost.
This is what it is. So I asked you and if you had any, because you're so true. When a kid, because you said, well, what other identity do they have? And I was well, that's a great question. I don't know whatever. Obviously he's a son, he's a friend, you know what I mean? He's a spirit in the universe, but that is 90% of the way that he walks in the world. So what do you do when 90% of your normal self as an athlete or self as, a person who can normally perform, their sport of choice to the best of their ability can't do that? How do you work through it? What are some things that, what would you say to yourself? Let's just say you were injured and maybe you have been, I don't know the last time. When's the last time you were injured?
I can't recall. Maybe like late last year it would have been, I'm sure. Like a little niggle or whatever. If it was something ongoing, and I mean, I always have niggles. Like right now I'm sitting here.
Have what? What? This is this must be a New Zealand word. What?
No, it's not. What? A niggle. A niggle.
What is that?
Oh, surely you know. It's like,
surely I don't.
It's not an injury, but you have like some sort of like tight muscle. So you're like, I've got some niggles. I can't believe you have not heard that term.
No, it's my first time. This is so exciting.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that's so hilarious. Like it is not a New Zealand thing. It must be, maybe it's an endurance athlete thing. Like just got a niggle.
I love that I'm using it now.
Oh, you should. It's awesome. Like you should. That needs to go viral.
Niggle?
Niggle.
L-E. Okay.
Like a wiggle, but it's a niggle. That's hilarious.
Okay, this is great. Okay. Yeah. A wiggle, but a niggle. I'm here for this one. Okay, good. Yeah, continue.
But for people like us, and actually this would maybe help Jake, is you just become involved in another way. So he becomes a water boy. He becomes, taking the towels out for the like being because part of it is that loss of identity because you feel you're no longer part of something. So you just become a part of it in a different way. So right now, if I couldn't run, I don't know that I would do this because I'm not. It's actually okay. I can deal with it. But if I was struggling and that was all of my community was in running, then I would volunteer at Park Run, which is a free 5K run every Saturday. Or I would go to my Harriers Club and I would volunteer there. So I would still be part of the community that people valued, and I'd do something of value. And then I would, you'd still feel sad, but that you couldn't do the thing, but you'd at least feel you were still part of something. But I have to say, right now, if I was injured, I mean, I'd be disappointed, but not because I'd be disappointed because I wouldn't be doing what I loved. Not that I'd sort of lost myself, but that sense of loss is very real for athletes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a sense of loss. That's exactly what I think. I think you do. You literally kind of have to walk away and you have it's a temporary, hopefully, sense of loss that you will regain with a better understanding of, what you need to do to help yourself in that moment. But it is exhausting I think for your mindset. And there's also one more thing I would say about injuries that I think are really challenging is there's a big unknown piece to them, right? You don't know 100% what your, what you need to do to maybe what you need to do, but you don't know the time frame and how long it's going to take. And everybody's kind of telling you a little bit of something different. And, you're not 100% sure. I'm just not 100% sure of what that looks like. And so I'm just very acutely aware of being mindful of what that time frame and just setting realistic expectations. But I think that's a really challenging part of it is just how the unknown piece. So I don't know, go back. So I always say, here's some action items, really deep dive into how you can, add physical therapy or whatever things you need to add. Like when you've been down, what have you done to like get back up faster? How have you expedited your healing? Has it been through food?
It's a minor piece of the puzzle. It is for, making sure when I had that bone injury, it was making sure I was eating enough because you think, well, I'm not doing anything, so I need to pull back my calories. And that's the last thing you want to do. Like the actual healing of the bone process particularly in that first couple of weeks, you need a lot more calories. And so, and I absolutely went hard on supplements. So normally from a food perspective, it would be reducing inflammatory load. So if you're eating junk food, then, or, a lot of highly processed and refined foods, you would minimize those. You would increase your
really fast. What are some of the very high inflammatory foods? Obviously you want to be mindful of them normally, but you want to be particularly mindful of them when you're healing. What are they?
They're the highly processed and refined, anything packet everything, basically.
Okay.
Yeah. So the anti-inflammatory foods would be fruits, vegetables, salmon and sardines, so fatty fish, would be lean proteins, would be anti-inflammatory. You've also got, and that's inclusive of like red meat and as well. People throw red meat under the bus for whatever reason.
I'm not one of those people.
No.
I ride the bus with red meat.
Yeah, nuts and seeds, eggs. Dairy is fine for most people, but you and I have discussed dairy and before about the potential for casein to be inflammatory for some individuals. And of course, minimizing alcohol and things like that. So you sort of. So from a diet perspective, there is a lot that you can do from an anti-inflammatory and a healing perspective, but I don't want to overstate it, because actually it's much more about the rest. It's much more rest, be it either active rest, mostly actually. That's the thing for the blood flow.
Explain active rest.
Yeah, I'm no physiotherapist, so I'm not. But you know, as I understand it, most things are like require a bit of blood flow. So being absolutely sedentary isn't great. And then where possible, just start rehabbing it, whatever that looks like for the individual or the injury that we're discussing. So yeah. So there is a lot you can actively do. And so actually taking ownership there is really helpful for the mindset as well. So you know that every day you are actively working towards getting better, rather than just going, I knew so many really great runners actually in my late 20s, and when they got injured, they'd like sit on the couch and eat junk food and lament the fact they couldn't run, rather than actively work at healing themselves. So, but that's a young person's thing more, I think.
Well, definitely. I still have a lot of, people that will come in and like something will feel, they'll have been injured or something will feel right. And they are just absolutely, they're like, we're not touching this side of my body, or we're not, you're like, oh gosh, there's got to be a fine line between that too, because I appreciate that you're here and that you're willing to like work hard and strength train and take care of your body, but like literally removing, it's like that, what you were talking about earlier, like the active, kind of the active recovery, that area still needs blood flow, body still needs blood flow, like keeping it kind of, obviously if it's broken, there's some things you can't move, but if it's not, I always encourage, letting, kind of like we talked about, rate of perceived exertion. We can talk about kind of like let pain be your guide, right?
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
And to be serious
right?
about that, yes.
Yeah, completely. Yes. Yeah, and not be silly, like, because like runners are great. What we tend to do is we go and test, like, oh, I wonder if this still hurts, until we go for a run.
Yes.
Oh yeah, it still hurts. Like even like well before, and we should know better, but for whatever reason we just don't.
Well, I saw it today when Jake, but he tested it. He's a water polo player and he's a swimmer, and he's like, look, I just want to get across the pool. I want to do a 50 of freestyle, and I want to see how I feel. I want to test it. Right. Yeah. And so I think it hurt.
Yeah.
It hurt, but I don't think I don't think that 26 seconds in the pool tonight, made, was like the big game changer to everything. I think that he just got out. I don't think it's going to make it infinitely worse, but I think he was just, a little bit frustrated that it still hurt. Like, I think he was hoping to kind of get in and be back to the way that he normally swims and feels. And it just wasn't there. And it just, again, I was thinking to myself as a parent, and I'm sure parents can relate to this. I think you feel heavy too. You feel like there's want to be more things that you want to be able to do. And it's a fine line between, pushing too much one way for them to reclaim that identity, and also backing up and like, is this working? And I always think about it psychologically too, because it's really depressing to your head space, to just not feel that the serotonin, the adrenaline, the actual like, transmitters, the neurotransmitters that take place when you perform at a place that you normally perform at. So, I love the idea of active recovery for people, so that you're still moving. So even if it's not the way you're normally moving, Theragunning, I think, is super important, because that just really helps to like break up the fascia and bring up blood flow. I think what you were saying tonight was more, to be more mindful of inflammatory foods, and then anti-inflammatory foods. I think some people kind of just think that's a sort of like what is that? But I think it's important to note what it is.
100%.
Right? Because that creates, I think what people also need to understand is the power of inflammation too, to like expedite recovery. I think the less inflammation you have in your body, the healthier you will feel and probably the faster you will recover. Is that fair?
Yeah, it is fair. The inflammatory process in the initial stages is super important. So I don't think they recommend icing immediately or anything like that, because you want that inflammation to be able to sort of go in and help heal. Like there's a lot of the macrophages and cholesterol and immunoglobulin factors, I don't know, whatever they are, they go in and they rush in and heal. And it's all part of that inflammatory process. But you do want to sort of move that in and move it out fairly quickly, as I understand it. But again, I'm no physio, so I might be wrong.
Yeah,
someone
it's fine.
can,
but I think
can correct me.
I think I was just more thinking about nutrition, as a way to expedite your recovery and how you can eat to expedite your recovery, but also eat to reduce inflammation. I think it's just something that I don't pay attention to as much, but I think simply put, less of the package, less of the refined things, less of the dead food, I like to say. Oh. If you ever want to know what's like, I'm like, it's very simple. It's not alive, right? There's dead and living food's dead. So just maybe don't put it in your body. You probably get a dead response. But I'll tell you something. You said sometimes, because I'll tell you a story real quick. My dad was very into like all this, healthy stuff at a point in time, where people just, it's like a very yuppie. I'm in the 80s and I'm like, running the Beta Breakers and I'm eating at, Berkeley Natural Grocery. And, he would buy all this crazy food. And I remember just being his kid, Mikki, and just being like, disgusting. You know what I mean? Like, that's what we're going to come home to. It's going to be like sauteed tofu and vegetables, Uncle Sam's cereal, which is just like this grainy, natural laxative, amaranth and
bread or something.
Yes, this is exactly. We had that bread. We had tofu ice cream sandwiches. We had, all of these things. But I remember him using, that was not my terminology. That was my dad's. So it was a direct, OG, Dan Court kind of thing. And he would say that, just that's dead food, it's living food, and you put that in your body. And so I kind of still think about it, even though I look at my pantry and I'm like, covering my head because I'm like, I'm not winning any big points with. I always think for a handful of gummy bears, did you have a chicken breast?
Yeah, no, totally. Like there is just this element of you have to sort of let go, surrender a little bit sometimes as a parent. Like you just can't do it all, can you? You can't. You have these wonderful visions of how things are going to play out, and then in real life that just doesn't happen that way.
I love to remind people that you have the power to hop into your emotional brain or your rational brain at any given moment in the day. And even when things are really hard and injuries are really hard, and we're experiencing this in our family right now, that you have some control in the situation. So when I'm in the emotional brain and feeling sorry for myself or feeling sorry for my kid or whatever, I just try to go out of it and go, okay, how much active recovery did we do today? What was your anti-inflammatory like foods, things like that? They make a difference because they reclaim your power in the situation, right? Yeah, everybody do. Like you just reclaim it. And these are some things that you can do. They will expedite your healing, and you will feel like you have a little bit of control in a very uncontrolled feeling, because injury just has this open-ended, like, okay, you're injured and we have no idea how long this is going to be, but so I would just encourage you to maybe like do these 1 or 2 or 3 things. I love our podcast for many reasons, but I do feel like people can walk away with like 3 nuggets, like they literally can go, and it feels really empowering. Like, okay, I can do those 3 things next time I'm in a state of injury, or my child is, or whatever, my friend.
And
right?
I imagine to close this out that Jake is getting like physical therapy on it as well, right?
Yes. I mean, that actually is going to a physical therapy appointment tomorrow.
Amazing.
So who's great. And so I'm going to kind of be in on that appointment so I can kind of hear and listen, because that's kind of its own brand of genius. People have their feelings one way or the other. But I think it is super powerful to healing. And it's also like not very invasive when you think about it. Right. But I could definitely be streamlining his diet a little bit better right now and his hydration. And I can also just think like we're doing everything that we can so I can feel a little bit less heavy, because I realize, if I'm being completely transparent, that a part of that identity of his is also part of mine.
Of course.
Not only me being an athlete, but me having an athletic son.
Yeah, totally.
A son who can perform at a certain place. And so it's, this is all a very psychological thing, but you do realize that while you're helping him do the work, I'm doing the work too. I'm doing the work too. I'm always doing the work, Mikki.
I know. No one can accuse you of never not doing the work.
This is,
and that's
100% true.
Like it's a super common, right? Parents and their children. I mean, that's just what happens.
I think it is very common. I think you feel the weight, no pun intended, of what they're experiencing, but you're also trying to give them something that doesn't feel so emotional to hold their hats on. And I think that, still active recovering and still doing these things and eating, in an inflammatory way, less dead, more alive. You might have, a few less niggles. Not to be confused with a wiggle with an N, everybody, which is just like a little, a pain here and there, a strain, a sprain. Okay.
It's not a sprain, not a strain, just a pain. Just a pain.
Just a pain.
Yeah. It's just a pain. A little niggle that you just work through, and then it randomly appears somewhere else in your body and you're like, okay, great, another little niggle. But in Laird Hamilton's words, and he's like this
I love him.
Yeah, he's so great,
he's
right?
One of my favorites, yeah.
Yeah, and he's like, mate, if I didn't have a wiggle, if I didn't have a niggle, and if I didn't have something wrong with me and injured, I let that prevent me from doing my sport, then I would never do anything. So he's just like, you just got to keep living.
I love it. I freaking love that. Also that sometimes you have to just kind of keep going in spite of yourself.
Exactly. And
he's one of the cooler dudes in the entire universe. So thank you for quoting Laird Hamilton.
So I'm taking my niggle up to the gym, basically, right now. And I'm like, I'm living the Laird Hamilton lifestyle. And I'm sure it's true. It is true. I mean, in the actual persistent rain, but still it's going down.
I think it makes a ton of sense. With that, I will ask you tonight, this morning, afternoon, what you're grateful for.
I am grateful. I love having these discussions where we just remind ourselves of what is important. And actually, there are times where you feel you don't have agency, but actually you do. And so it's always nice little snippets to remind you.
I like the word agency.
Yeah,
not as much as I like the word niggle, but I'm here for that. I am supremely grateful for that, for you, and that the ability to do this, because I think anytime that you can, more concisely articulate a intense emotion in your body, you release it and it becomes less weight for you.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very powerful place to be. So I with that, we'll go make Jake a big salad and add a little protein to that, and look forward to seeing you very soon.
Next week. Amazing. Mm-hmm.